So Kyle, I want you to listen to this short little clip, and then we're going to have I want to get your take on how we were warned already back in the 60s of the deep state and the deep church. And then if we can connect some of the dots. Mr. Engineer, can you play the clip?
If I were the devil, if I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing.
Kyle, this was written by Paul Harvey back in 1964. He was a radio talk show host, and he passed away in 2009. It seems like everything that he's talking about in terms of the devil's plan, this is back in the 60s, has been put in place now. And he made a lot of references, especially to the way the devil, would go after the church. Which also, if you read The Naked Communist by Leon Clausen, who was also a conservative writer who passed away a couple of years ago, he also talks about the way that communism, one of the main goals of communism was to infiltrate the church. So you have communism, which admits that the infiltration of the church is part of their top priorities. And Paul Harvey, who I would consider kind of he was prescient. He was a political prophet. Everything he says in If I Were the Devil, 1964, has come to pass. And it's come to pass, my definition is, it's come to pass by a term that we use called the deep state, or the New World Order, or the Luciferian oligarchs. But now we have the deep church as well, which we're seeing. It's coming more and more obvious, especially in light of the nexus of the USCCB and all the charitable organizations underneath the umbrella of the USCCB that are receiving boatloads of federal money, and not all the money is being used for wholesome and righteous purposes. A lot of the money is being used to basically traffic people that have been, enslaved by the Mexican cartels, and they're shoveling them over here under the auspices of refugee services. But again, the deep state seems to be funding the deep church, and this is a lose-lose situation for lay Catholics, because our church is being dragged in the mud right now in society. And also, it's never a good thing when the church allows itself to be fed by the coffers of Uncle Sam.
Well, you're exactly right. If you want to look at a disordered relationship between church and state, you only have to look at Germany, where this was a seat of Christendom. However, there was a blemish on the church in Germany going way, way back, and that was that they wanted it on their own terms. And that's precisely what's happening in the United States, is the demon uses the legitimacy of the church to do things which are illegitimate. We have a whole rogues gallery of a cast of characters which are bad actors. They are bad actors. We're involved in a revolution of common sense in this country. Thanks be to God. It is a coming back to right thinking, and it's going to be a simple tolling, T-O-L-L, tolling, like tolling a bell, tolling the truth. And it's going to sound a lot like I told you so. But unless the other side, the forces of evil, that militate against right order, unless those are expunged, not beaten back, not schooled on, not given a lesson, but totally expunged, unless those elements are removed, then it's going to come back. It's like pulling weeds. Unless you shake it to the core and get all of the root out, then there's going to be something from which it can come back. We're being called to a conversion, an ethical conversion, a moral conversion, a conversion of right order, as well as a religious or spiritual conversion. The prayers of many people have been answered, in that the hand of God has been stayed, given us a chance to return to right order, to return to Him. And I think that if you simply look at Scripture and look at it deeply, you see the consequence, or the sequence, if you will, of the sin salvation cycle. The departure from right order, the deviancy that the chosen people went through. And now you look back and you trace the history of the church, and we see those times when, as a church, especially the hierarchy, they were fooled and they were duped. But all the while, there was a dark thing operating. There was the serpent in the garden. And it does not matter how much they know or how much they think they're in league with the devil. He will do more. The demon is more effective working through someone who will justify the means by the ends. They will say it's a good thing. It doesn't matter how we got there. And so what happens is, when you knock the scab off of this thing and see the depths of depravity, it's got to be a rigorous cleansing. It's got to be an understanding that every single person that was involved in any of the McCarrick incidents, any of those other incidents of covering up, letting the church operate as if it was above the law, anyone involved in those, the appointees of this Pope, all of these people are dubious at best, and there has to be a cleansing. Many people will say, well, you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I'm telling you, there's no baby in this bathwater. This is not bathwater. This is putrid, tepid, stagnant water that has been allowed to be called bathwater. And we've got to do what is necessary to absolutely radically address the state of the church in this country and the state of the church in this world. And it will be up to the laity. But you're exactly right. The piece you played from Paul Harvey, I listened to Paul Harvey for 40 years of my life and miss him greatly, because he was a voice of sanity, a voice of sobriety, in a time where he spoke the same. His message never changed, but the political winds of this country blew with him and they blew against him. But he was always the same, and constancy is what we are lacking the most.